Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Backlog Banter. Today I've got another special guest with me, Oscar. Welcome to the show.
Hello, good to be here.
I guess for those who have no idea who you are, do you mind introducing yourself and kind of telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Oscar. I am a composer and sound designer from Queensland, Australia. I have a background mainly in composition and sound design, but I've been venturing into the games world for a little while now and been enjoying it ever since.
I guess to kind of get more of context around, how you ended up where you are, I want to kind of learn about your first exposure to games, maybe it's growing up or later in life, as well as how you got into music and kind of your journey from like where it all started when you were younger up until now. What was that like?
The first video games that I experienced weren't my own. They were my cousins and my uncles. Different cousins and uncles. They weren't in the same family. But my cousins, for some reason I was hanging out with them, they were doing like a gymnastics thing. And I was tagging along, sitting in the audience, obviously very bored. And they said, "Hey, do you want to just play this?" And they gave me a Game Boy with Pokemon on it. And yeah, rest is history after that. I think around the same time, my grandma would pick me up from school and she would have my uncle's old Mega Drive. And so that was something that she was like, "Oh, I don't know how it works. You figure it out." I would have to get behind the TV, plug it all in, and then I'd play these games. Barely knew how to read. Plug them in, be like, "Whoa, this is crazy." So yeah, getting left to experience some extremely good games all on my own. Yeah, makes for a good time.
Well, what's one of the games you were playing? Obviously, it was Pokemon. You said in the Game Boy. But what else was there?
On the Mega Drive would have been Sonic 2, would have been a big one. My uncle also had the weird Mega Drive version of Strider, which was really scary. That was terrifying. He also had Jurassic Park. Again, really scary as a child. You play as Alan Grant, and then if you like fall off a ledge, you die. Or the dinosaur spits acid at you and you die. But then there's a way you can play as the raptor, and that's cool.
Did you ever like progress very far on those games, or as a kid did you find things difficult?
Hopeless.
Yeah.
But I would just keep playing them, especially like stuff with like Sonic where like it doesn't even save. You just gotta boot it up again and you just go, "Here I am. Guess I'm just playing this."
I think I had a bit of exposure to Game Boy, not much though. Like I think my friends had it, but they were always very, especially like with the Pokemon games, it's like there's one save. So, I remember hearing stories of like some kids would like send their Game Boys around school and then they would like their playtime would just be crazy compared to everyone else because like the game was always being played. So it was like great for them in terms of like leveling up their Pokemon.
Yeah.
But some other friends were like, "No, don't touch my game. Like, this is my team. You don't ruin my stuff."
Yeah.
I also played Sonic 2 a lot as well, and I loved it because we had two controllers. This was my brother-in-law.
Yep.
Two controllers. One worked and one didn't. And so when younger kids were over and I was playing the one that did work and they played with the controller that didn't work, but they didn't know because they saw Tails and like, "That's me. That works."
I mean, yeah, it's basically the same even if it does work, right?
Yeah. But it's funny, so you mentioned like the more scary games. I remember another experience was this is the one thing for me that like blew my mind was when I played like Halo on the Xbox. That wasn't a crazy one. But they also had, I remember, I think it was a cousin, had like Buffy or something, some sort of vampire in the Xbox game. And like you, like I didn't get past like the first segment. Like I'd open the game and there'd be like this scary like cutscene and stuff. It'd be all creepy. And it's funny because my mum was there watching and she's usually very like, "Oh, it's too scary." But she was like, "That's a video game." And like she's like, I was like, "Oh, it's R-rated, Mum. What's that mean?" She's like, "Oh, it means it's not for you, but we're gonna watch anyway." But I think it's because like I could never get past that first. It was like some weird cutscene. It's like, "Go to the stairs," and I couldn't tell where or what to do. So yeah, it's just funny. You reminded me of those times in my life where I was like, yeah, gaming as a kid was so cool, but also like. It's funny how you wouldn't progress very far, but somehow you just kept coming back being like, "I want to see what this experience is," because it was such like a groundbreaking thing.
For sure.
And then I guess from there, did you end up getting any of your own consoles?
Family friend lent us their Mega Drive and then eventually Nintendo 64. Ocarina of Time was a very important one on there. They had the gold cartridge. It was pretty awesome. And then yeah, eventually I begged my parents enough to get me a GameCube, and like I think probably a Game Boy Advance before that. But yeah, that's where my own console having began.
And were you more inclined to Nintendo back then? Did you ever like switch to?
I think PlayStation wasn't really on my radar. I think it was. I don't know. I think just because I was young, bright colors are better. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I remember that McDonald's had GameCubes in my local McDonald's, and I always beg for two reasons. One, because all the cool toys. That's when like the Sonic toys, the little arcade games are coming out, and I was like, I want to get a Happy Meal for that Sonic toy. But also, my Macca's had, or McDonald's, sorry for our international viewers, Macca's is the Aussie way of saying McDonald's, just so you know. But they had GameCubes there, and so I was always playing Luigi's Mansion and that sort of stuff. Where I was like, man, that was peak. I didn't even know at the time. I was just like, oh yeah, it's a video game. I was like, man, that was so cool.
Yeah.
And so at this time, were you also practicing music? Were your parents, very like, what was your first instrument?
So I learned piano for a while. My mum picked up piano when she was quite old for a piano student. And I think she was doing her like grade 8 exams or whatever for piano while she was pregnant with me. So she definitely wanted to pass that on.
You heard it in the womb and were like, you know what, this is my future. I hear this.
She was encouraging me to play when I was young, and then I got lessons properly when I was probably like 8 or something. It was good. I enjoyed it, and it wasn't horrible. So I just kept doing it, and then it became an area of expertise. And just kept investing in it,
Did you go from piano to other instruments?
Yeah. So I played piano for a while, and then when I went to high school, they had an instrument program. So I picked up viola there.
Wow.
The reason for that was it was strategic. I think my parents were like, we want something that's not too big, but also everyone plays violin. So
yeah,
don't do
exactly.
violin. So viola was the pick, and it was a good one because it means that I can at the moment I play in a community orchestra, and it's they're always looking for violas, so
that's such clever parenting as well. How did they do that? Like I've heard about that more recently than being like, don't play violin, play viola, because no one, obviously, it's not as widely used, I guess you'd say, but there's so much more people playing violin. It's like you're competing so much. It's just funny that even your parents are like, back then were aware, like, nah, if he's going to play in the orchestra, we're going to make sure he's got this on. So that's really good. So they're always supportive of you, like playing instruments. Did you kind of say back then like you wanted to be a musician or like a performer of some sort?
Yeah, I think so. It was definitely, music was something that I felt was always just like intrinsically part of life, really, for me. I didn't really see a future where I could stop. I think I tried to quit piano once and had a mental breakdown. And so never tried that again. But yeah, it's always been something that I've done. And as I said before, once you start investing in it and it starts paying off, then it's a lot easier to, return back to it and give it more time, and then it becomes easier again.
What were some of the payoffs for playing piano?
A lot of it was, I think from games, I would be able to grab those melodies and stuff and play them on the piano. Anything that I heard and liked, just being able to like use that as like a puzzle, basically. I don't know. It was just, it was something that was, again, pretty intrinsic. It was just something that I enjoyed, and I didn't like practicing, but when I did practice, it felt good,
Right, it was one of those things where it's like exercise, you hate doing it, but once you do it, you're like, oh, that was good for me. I'm curious then to know why you tried quitting.
I was probably getting overwhelmed. I think there was, I think the inciting incident was, one of my high school music teachers asked if I wanted to accompany the choir. And my sight reading is not very good, which is usually a prerequisite for being an accompanist, because otherwise you just have to practice heaps, way too much. And so he was asking me. I had never been in a choir before. I didn't really know what they needed from me. I think I it helped with one of the rehearsals, and I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy! I don't know if I want to do this," because I was just thrown in the deep end. Um, but then it's one of those things. I my mum said, "Okay, if you want to quit piano, you are the one that has to tell your teacher." And so we sat, went to the lesson. Mum said, "Okay, he's got something to tell you," and my teacher goes, "What? What's up?" And I go, "Oh, nothing." Let's just do the lesson. It was emotionally a lot easier to just get on with it. But it was good. It was those kinds of experiences. It was a lot going in. And I think I said to that choir teacher, I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can commit to this." And he said, "That's fine, whatever." But after that, the stuff that we did do in there, I then would go away and noodle away on that and try and work that into my kind of repertoire. Just learn how to do those kinds of things.
So when did it start going from like performing music and other people's songs to then composing and writing your own?
Probably, I've been thinking about this lately. That again, the one moment in the high school computer labs, or in like the music rooms, they had computers with two of the main programs on there. One was Sibelius, and the other one was GarageBand. And so I saw some kids playing with GarageBand. They were dragging loops in, and I was like, what is that?" So I sat down at one of them, booted it up, found where all the loops were, and I was like, "Hold on, this is kind of sick." Just dragging loops in, playing around with the different layers and stuff. And then I was hooked from then. I knew I needed to get my own copy of that, and then eventually upgrade to different software, and you start recording things on a microphone, and it's a slippery slope.
It's all like uphill or downhill from there. Like I feel like
Yeah.
depending how you look at it,
Yeah.
it's either like then it all began or it's like then it all fell apart.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you weren't like really out seeking for it, kind of just stumbled into your life in terms of like you were just at school hanging, saw some kids doing stuff and be like, what is that? And then from there you're like, oh, okay, got to get onto this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where I had a little bit of music knowledge, but being able to take that a really long way with those kinds of tools was super satisfying. So yeah.
What were your first pieces like? Do they sound good, do you think? Or do you know?
They were, I mean, those ones would just sound like a group of GarageBand loops all in a line, probably. But yeah, everything starts super rudimentary, especially if you're doing stuff in school. You don't even know what the world's like. So all your stuff is about, I hate homework or whatever. But
so true.
Yeah. It still sucks. I was right. But yeah, eventually I would start using like notation software a bit more and writing music out by hand, which was fun. I enjoyed that, as it's an interesting, again, it's sort of like a puzzle in symbology. You're trying to describe events taking place over time using only dots and lines. It's a really bizarre system that over thousands of years has been refined into something that seems to work. It's never quite perfect, but that's part of the fun.
Oh, that's really interesting that you then start writing stuff on paper. Is there a certain process you enjoyed the most in terms of the way you write stuff? Do you have fun doing it all on the computer? Do you rather sit down with the pen and pencil and kind of, especially when you're, obviously sometimes when you get given contract work, people kind of want things simply. They have certain ways of doing stuff. But I guess if you were to like write your magnum opus of like your biggest, how would be your process in making something you were really proud of?
Yeah, it would probably start at a piano with a pen and paper, or pencil and paper, and an eraser. I think getting hands on with an instrument is really useful for me, because there's no space for you to do any editing at the time of inception. You just kind of have to go with the flow. And then eventually you are like, oh, that sounded kind of cool. Let's see if I can do it again. And you play it and it sounds a bit different. You go, that wasn't quite it. Let's try it again. And you find it and you go, okay, I'll write that down. Then you write it down, you try and play it and you go, oh, that doesn't sound like what I did. Let's change these bits. That's it. And then eventually Yeah, so I would start there with trying to find like a melody. That's something that I think I enjoy most in the music that I listen to, and the music that I write probably is coming up with a melody that is that's it's hard to describe, but it's like it has its own identity,
Mm.
and feels like it can evolve and change and has lots of layers within it. And that's what I look for when I'm starting something out, I think.
I'm curious to know, obviously, you kind of were playing games and making music kind of separately. When did they both kind of combine and you realized that you could do both?
Yeah. Um, I was, for a long time, I was convinced I was going to be a film composer, which it still might be the case, who knows? But that was what I was striving for. Um, and it was cool, but something that happens in film is you're always constrained by the picture, which is um, very defined. They have shot the footage. This is what the footage is going to be. The character drinks their glass of water at exactly 45 seconds and 13 frames, and that's what you have to deal with, which means that the music often becomes, I find, at least for me, a lot more reactionary. You have to make these concessions. You might be in the middle of your melody just reaching its climax and you just have to cut it off because some other characters walked on screen. And it means that musically, these things, they don't quite translate to like a performance setting, which not everything needs to, but it doesn't fully get to breathe in the way that, a classical piece of music or a pop piece of music would, where they get to fully develop and sort of present themselves as musical ideas first and foremost. So I think that games is a unique thing where the music does stand on its own. It kind of exists within its own realm. There are times where it does need to stop and swerve and react to whatever's happening on screen, but a lot of the time that can't be accounted for at the time of composition. So you have to write these pieces of music that work on their own, and then they also have to be able to stop and pivot and then do something else if they need to. And I think that's a really interesting challenge that allows for more musicality than you can get out of film. Yeah.
So did you like have other friends who you met who were making games and were like, we need someone with audio? Or were you kind of obviously looking at doing film composing, were like, I need someone with a bit more freedom, and then you're experimenting more with different ideas?
Yeah, I was never around many games people growing up. It was kind of something that I liked. I knew that other people enjoyed playing games. I would talk with lots of people about playing games. But yeah, making games was hard to come by. In When I started uni, I was like, okay, well, none of these people in uni, I can't, like, I was doing a Bachelor of Music. Hard to find game developers in a Bachelor of Music, unsurprisingly. So I said to myself, well, I guess I'm just going to have to do this thing myself. So I tried my best learning any kind of engine that I could. I tried Twine and Bitsy and all the like no code, draw some little sprites and make them move around really easily. And then I'll try and write some music alongside that. And then eventually I made my way to Unity and learning C# and stuff like that, just so I could have something to give audio to. Because sometimes it can be a bit weird when if you sit down and go, right, time to write a cool piece of music for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's for a long time, it's been kind of the one-man band situation, just trying to make games and music at the same time. But I definitely do. I've met heaps more people who make games now, which is super exciting. And so getting to collaborate with them is a lot more fulfilling than doing something on my own, I think.
What obviously you made things on your own, but I guess if you were to make something and you had unlimited time and resources, what's kind of the game that you would want to make, and what's the sound and music around that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's one game I really like the world of The Wind Waker,
Mhm.
Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and I think that game and also one of its spin-offs, Spirit Tracks, super cool. I think they should. I think going one step further, having a world with boats and trains and planes would be probably the best game. So something in that vein, sort of like a stylistic transport simulator with some easy breezy music, I think would be cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Have you seen? Oh, gosh, send you a link probably. There's someone who, or a team, they're making basically like a train sim in that style of Zelda.
I think I saw a gif of that and I went, "What?" And then it disappeared and then
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never seen
I
it
don't know if
again.
they've got a Steam demo now out, but like it's like a team of at least like 3 or 4 people who are like making it
Damn,
now,
that's
and
so
it
cool.
looks good. I'm like, hey, fair enough.
Yeah,
You guys have got it
yeah.
handled. So maybe you should pitch to them, be like, now do trains, planes, and other terrains. So
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I think they're focusing on trains right now, but that's really interesting that you love that mechanic so much. You're like, I want more of that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
What were you making by yourself, obviously, before when you were learning Unity and making
Mm.
stuff alone?
Some Twine stuff, super early, and that was just like, I don't even know if I put any music to that. That was just learning like how to link things together and just writing a short story that has branching parts. Um, there was one Bitsy game where you play as a little ghost, and that had some sort of spooky, backrooms vibes. Um, and then, yeah, I think it was Pandemic where I eventually hit Unity. There was like a Humble Bundle with a C Sharp course in it. And I was like, sure, nothing else to do. So I'll do this. And so that was good. And then I eventually started doing just like a first person sandbox type thing. You would just walk around. I in that same Humble Bundle, I got like probably a bunch of assets, um, 3D assets that just chuck them in, walk around, make them make sound when you get close to them. Super basic stuff. But I had a lot of fun making that, and it was a very playful project. Just kind of seeing what worked. Just trying to get to grips with the tools. There wasn't kind of any overarching vision. It was just kind of muck around and see what you can do, and then once you get bored, it's done.
Yep. That's a great to know you're finished and you get bored of it. You're like, all right, cool, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Release it. Um, that's really interesting. Do you have like a genre or style of music you most enjoy composing?
I'm going to answer no. I think I really enjoy the part of the appeal of it for me is trying to get to the crux of what how a certain genre of music works.
Mm.
So figuring out if someone's like, oh, I got this thing. It really needs some like breakcore, some fast beats, and like heavy bass. It's like, okay, cool. Let's see what we can sort of get rocking. Um, or if something's like, oh, we want this to be a bit more jazzy and pared back. That's a different kind of challenge, but it's fun to try and find, where those limits are. When you put something in, you go, oh, okay, that stops it from being jazzy, or that takes the energy down too much. That's part of the fun of composing for me, I think.
When you're working with others, is there a cliche of things they ask for? They're like, oh, I want it to sound jazzy, and you're like, okay, cool, give me a bit more context. Or other times where they're too restrictive, and you're like, guys, if you just let me do this thing, like I can. What's it like working with others in that aspect?
I find, um, for me, it's hard to get into other people's minds when it comes to music. I like to try and encourage them to give me as much reference as possible if they have something in mind, because otherwise I'll give them something and then they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, this is good, but can you make it more like snappy?" And it's like, oh, I don't. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So reference is always really good to get everyone on the same page. I've been trying to avoid doing my own reference too much. So if I'm working with someone and they go, oh, I don't really know, um, I don't like being like, well, what about this playlist of things? Just because then it means I'm starting to get ideas in my own head of what it is meant to be without consulting the maker of the project. So I can get a bit stuck because I'll have my own ideas, and then they'll say, "Yeah, I liked this part of this song," and I was like, "Whoa, that I wasn't even listening to that part of that song. I was going for a whole different aspect of that." So yeah, getting reference from the person with a vision is usually really good. And then, yep, I'll try and give them a reference, an example of the track, so that we can nail it down pretty quick. It's not fun fully investing and then working on it for a couple of weeks, and then someone's like, "Oh, it's not really the right vibe," because then you have to go, "Oh, well, okay, I guess I'll use that for something else." I don't know.
How long does it usually take for you to write a track? Obviously, there's kind of times when you work with people where it's back and forth.
Mm,
But if you were to kind of remove that feedback and just focus on the time of you actually working on it,
yeah,
how long do you think it would take for you?
it really depends on the type of music. If you're gonna write like a solo piano piece, I could probably smash that out pretty quickly, especially depending on the length. Like if it's at just 2.5 minutes of piano, that's pretty easy. Because it's only one instrument, you don't have to deal with too much production. But if it's like a fully orchestral, like, yeah, like 5 minute suite that needs to loop and potentially break off at this certain point into a different track, it's like, okay, that's a lot of
Yeah.
technical stuff. But yeah, usually I like to try and, yeah, get those sketches happening. It can be really hard, or at least I find it daunting, giving someone a music sketch, because it's like, this isn't what it's going to sound like at all, but these are the notes that are going to
Yep,
be in
right.
it. So it can be really hard to translate that. If I get worried that someone's going to be like, "What are you doing? This is not even," and it's like, no, it's not finished yet.
Do you think
um,
there's like, because I feel like, for example, when game devs, especially when you're like, you can tell prototype art, you can tell prototype code.
yeah.
Do you think it's hard for them to then like see, drafts of music? They kind of need to hear the whole thing to fully comprehend it.
Yeah, sometimes I think there's a thing that happens, especially in the film world, where they'll do some editing, and they'll put a piece of music in because it helps them edit. It gets some beats flowing, cuts to certain pieces of the track, but then they get really attached to the temp track. So then you come to them and be like, "Okay, here's this piece of music. It weaves in all the themes we've created for this work." In a style that's similar to the temp track, and then the director will go, "Oh, kind of like the temp track more. Like, as I've listened to it 1,000 times, it's like really good." Which is, it's just like part of the industry now. Hollywood deals with it all the time. Yeah, so it can be hard. Like, I feel like the first impression of a piece of music is like super important. So it can be hard to give someone something that's kind of half baked, because then they're like, "Ah, why did the the kazoo sound come in so loud?" And it's like, "Oh, well, I just haven't turned it down yet. I was just checking notes and just didn't turn it down."
I guess in terms of like instruments, obviously there's the very simple piano pieces you say, but then also the massive orchestral stuff.
Mm,
How is it when you're doing things kind of in between, maybe more jazzy, stylized, even like more electronic,
mm,
gamified versions?
yeah.
Um, how do you pick instruments for things like that, or like certain sounds for elements in a piece?
There's a couple of different approaches, I think. For me, there's a couple of things that the music needs to do, especially in a game. It kind of needs to tell you where and when you are. So if you're in a certain period in time in our real world, reflecting that in the music can be a really strong way to get that idea across. But also, it needs to get the vibe. So obviously, you don't want to do something super slow and sad if it's
Mm.
a game about a happy guy jumping on mushrooms or whatever. Not going to work unless you're really going for the juxtaposition. But yeah, in terms of instrument choice, yeah, the time period stuff can really help. But a lot of the time, it's about frequency ranges. So you want to make sure that there's a nice balance of things down low and in the middle and up high that aren't like crowding each other. Especially if you've got other sound effects going on, you want to make sure there's room for those. Otherwise, it can sound pretty busy pretty fast.
And so when you're picking instruments, are you looking obviously at the frequency range? Are you going through everything you have in the back end of terms of like libraries and stuff and just going through each sound being like, no, no, yep? Or do you have like your go-to sounds kind of used for your draft
Mm.
pieces or?
A lot of the time, yeah, I'll try a few different things. I'll go, okay, I know I need some kind of bass here, and it needs to be pretty short. So I'll just play around some patches and on some synths or something, or grab some sample libraries, and play around with the sounds a bit. It's good to always not go just off the presets, I find, because sometimes they can be close, but you can really, if you can dial them in, it'll make things a lot more harmonious. A lot of the time, a track will start with either like a general melody or a groove, and then kind of building layers on that. Usually the bass comes in pretty early for me, especially if there's a melody, just getting that bass line rocking. And then rhythm probably after that. And I personally find rhythm pretty tricky. It's hard to find to get things to sound groovy, if that's what you need. And it's also hard to get it to be impactful without like destroying the sound of the other instruments. It's hard to get that kind of thing working well together. But yeah, those are usually pretty early, the bass and the percussion, if the melody isn't there already.
Man, that's so much insight. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Taking notes here.
Yeah.
No, it's really cool. One thing I want to talk about, this is something I feel like I've always mentioned whenever I talk about you on my channel or even just in person, because it's my go-to reference now for music, basically. So on your website, you have a portion or a list of tracks where you basically challenge yourself to make a track each day. It was back in 2018.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about how you came up with the idea and your experience around that and making each song.
I was just out of uni and I was kind of looking for things to do. I think I was I was looking for a job at the same time that I like started doing this project. So this was like part of my keep yourself busy routine. But I had heard of people doing these 100-day projects where they would just do one small thing a day, and then they would do that for 100 days. And then, when you do something 100 times, it's impressive to some people. So I gave it a go. A lot of the time it was just going as fast as I could. So the first idea I had, I was like, okay, that'll do. Let's see what we can get out of this, and kind of squeeze it until it's dry. And then once it's done, that's it. That's where we'll cut it off. Usually the tracks in there are pretty short. They're like 30 seconds or a minute or something. But I was just trying to, again, it was finding that flow state and just being like, okay, I've got this seed of an idea. Let's kind of throw everything at it. If we do something and it sounds bad, just take it away and do something else. And then just keep going. Sometimes I would go in with like, okay, today is Cowboy Day. Need to make a cowboy track. That's on the cards. Other days would be, I don't know, here's a weird sound. Let's just see what happens with this and then build it out. There were a couple of days where like it would be late at night, probably not even at night, in the afternoon, and there would be some friends over or something, and I'll be like, I have to work on this thing. Do you want to come and help? And they'd be like, sure. So I'll just bash some stuff out. They go, what about this sound if it went E-R, E-R? And I go, okay, I'll try and put that in. So that was fun, doing some of that collaborative stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know you like worked with others with doing it, because some of them I actually genuinely love listening to, and I use as templates. And sometimes I'll credit you in a video because I'm like, it's a great song, it's a great background banger track. I'm like, yeah, go check out Oscar's stuff. He's awesome. So it's really interesting to hear. Like, obviously, like just some days you'll go in having no context, just trying to get something out. Other days you're like, all right, today is Cowboy Day, and you put on your hat and you're just like, let's do something. Do you think out of that experience you learnt to like compose faster? Do you think you got better at doing melodies? What things do you think you learned out of that process?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a good exercise in learning the software. I think that was the biggest kind of benefit I found from it. I got very fast at moving things around and getting them to do what I wanted them to do, which was good, because that kind of stuff can take a really long time. So if you're able to knuckle down and do it in, a third of a year. That helps. I think also I might have picked up some bad habits while I was doing it. Um, there were some. I still to this day I find myself like kind of putting one idea down, fleshing it out, and being like, that's done, great, and then I'll listen back and be like, that's half of it. I need to do a bit more. So yeah, there's some pros and cons for sure. Especially if you're not able to like, if it's something that, if you're doing it every day, you're obviously not going to want to spend like a huge amount of time doing it every day. Otherwise, it's your whole life. So you can definitely pick up some bad habits, but if you're able to find them, you can or identify them at least. It's pretty easy to undo them as well.
So obviously you've now worked with other people, you've met other game devs. What would you suggest to people maybe who are going to events for the first time or trying to find music for their game? How would you go about reaching out to people, negotiating, incomes or royalty shares, or like what is too much to ask from a musician versus what do you think they're more okay with doing?
Yeah. It obviously changes from project to project. There's no one size fits all, which I know is a bit of a cop out answer, but it is true.
Yeah.
The number one thing is communication. Obviously, talking to whoever you're working with is going to give you the best idea of what's going to work for the two of you. I think in terms of being a musician or let's start with getting out into the scene. I found that showing up to local events consistently, it might not feel like it does anything, but it's a bit of a snowball effect. So once you start, if you keep going, the returns become greater and greater. And eventually, if you go, the first time you go, you might talk to a couple of people. They've all been going to this one, meetup event or whatever for like 10 years. And you go, okay, that was weird. I've only been there once and they've been going for ages. You probably won't talk to someone else who's only going for their first time when you go for your first time. You might, and that's great. That can be a really good way to make some good friends pretty quickly. But I think going for a few times and then talking to more people that you see more often is the best way to kind of get to know these people and know if you're going to work well together. I think I haven't been able to go to, because there's only so many local meetups. I haven't been able to go to a new meetup in a long time. But I've had this idea lately that when you go to a meetup for the first time, you just talk to whoever. Play it cool. Don't go too crazy. Just kind of get to know the faces in the room. When you go your second time, there are going to be people that you recognize. They probably won't recognize you because they've probably been going a lot longer than you have. But I feel like if you see a face you recognize on your second time, then you should, if there's an elegant way for you to introduce yourself, you should definitely take that chance and say, hey, this is my second time here. I noticed you here last time. Can you tell me about yourself? Or I'm going to introduce myself. Just playing that long game is it's tough, but it's definitely the way to go, I think. What else were we talking about here? Music and collaborating with people.
Yeah, once you get to know people, how do you then work together with them?
Yeah. Making sure you have common musical interests will help as well. I think talking about music you like is usually a good way to find where you align with people. Or games that you like is usually good as well. Again, kind of calling back to before, if you're starting to work with someone, if you can give a musician reference, that's going to help you help them make something that is close to that. The musicians, I feel like, especially in game music, either they will have a style and they'll stick to that, and that's easy because they've already got a style and you'll probably know what that is. Or they'll be pretty versatile and they'll be able to kind of latch on to whatever you give them and make their own unique version of that. So if you're able to give them reference, that is always super helpful and it will get the ball rolling pretty fast, I think. In terms of musicians talking to devs, it's interesting. I've heard a couple of different sides of this story, but when I was, starting out as a and when I say starting out, I mean really starting out. At the very beginning, there was people would say, don't cold call, don't just be like, hey, you need a composer for your game. And I still think that's good advice. You shouldn't just walk up to random people on the street and say, do you need a composer for your game? They'll go, I'm not even making a game. What are you talking about? But even people who are making games, it's better to get to know them as a person. If they're making a game, they've probably got someone who's making music or audio for it already. That is the long and short of it. That is most likely what's going to be happening. If you are able to communicate with a game developer in a friendly way, and then show them what you can do in a way that is non-capitalistic, you'll probably, even if you don't end up making music for them, they might refer you to someone else. They've got a network. It's usually just a better idea to express your engagement in what they're doing, and then show them what you enjoy, and build a friendship, basically. A lot of the time, the professionals will use the word networking, and that's one way to think of it. But a lot of the time, these people are going to be interested in the things that you're interested in, and you're just going to be able to be friends with them a lot sooner than they'll be part of your network, as it were.
Yep.
Yeah.
For example, there's devs out there who maybe can't find someone to make music for them, or maybe they want to give it a crack themselves. In a more condensed version, what advice would you give them for making their own music for their games? Much like you were making games for your music, how would you then do that in reverse? They've made a game, but now they want to incorporate something themselves, but they've got no musical talent. They've never composed anything before.
Yeah. It's a bit tricky. It's like asking someone who's fluent in a language, how do I learn the language? They don't really know what the resources are right now because they learned the language a long time ago when they were a child.
Yeah.
But I would say first step is use whatever you've got to make something. Even if it's you just humming into your phone, that's more than nothing. And it'll give you a better idea of what you do actually want. And then you'll be able to start looking at that. You'll hum into your phone, you go do 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 do, and you'll go, oh, okay, I think that's not snowy enough. I need something more snowy. You go listen to some snowy music, and you go, they're all using these chimes. I'll try and find a way to make that chime sound, and then you'll try something like that, and eventually you'll get in there. Music theory is really rough, and I don't think everyone needs to know it. I would say, if it's something you're interested in, feel free, go for it. But I don't think it's something that's going to quickly enhance your musical output. So don't worry too much about the music theory. I would say just make something. If you've got the means, get a little MIDI keyboard, grab whatever kind of free software you can, any free sound packs, do some digging, make whatever you can, and that'll probably sound all right.
Solid advice there, honestly. Like humming into your phone is such a great idea because then you're already composing straight out. Like I always, my thought was okay, got to get a MIDI keyboard or get the software or at least have an instrument to play on. But it's like no, if you're just like humming the tune, even if you've got terrible vocal cords, you can at least get something out and be like, okay, I don't like that, even though in my head it sounded different. So that's really good advice. I love that. I guess going into how you are now, what you're doing, where do you see yourself going in the next maybe 5-10 years? Are there any goals or things you want to achieve or things you want to see in the industry as well surrounding music and sound?
For me, in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm currently trying to kick off more freelance audio stuff. So whether that is something that is sustainable or not, in the next 5 or 10 years, I will have at least tried, which is exciting. There's definitely some more skills that I want to build up. I think I want to get better at music production. That's something that I'm looking forward to digging into more. But in terms of all the other parts of the question, the industry, music in the industry, I think, and I can only really speak locally in the Australian industry from what I've seen so far, I think I would like to see more performances of game music, especially local game music, in more um, uh, regular settings. I think in America it's really cool to see stuff like MagFest and lots of other, game-based gigs where there'll be lots of. I've seen there's a thing going on in America that's probably has been for a while, where instead it's like a jazz show, but instead of playing jazz standards, it'll all be video game tunes that people will just be ripping solos over. It sounds really good. I think locally, I'd love to see that more. Something I'd like to participate in for sure. I think definitely there's more. Obviously, the generation as they grow up, they're going to be more familiar with games. So potentially, it's something that could happen. But yeah, Australia's an interesting place for that kind of thing. There's always going to be something weird around the corner, and I hope that games can be a part of it for sure.
That's cool. Do you see any like limitations in Australia in terms of like people who want to make music compared to those obviously internationally?
Yeah, there can definitely be some. In my personal experience, the best way to get to know someone is face to face, especially like at least in a starting off context. There's just more people in America or in Europe that are closer together, so it's a lot easier to do that.
Mm.
But in saying that, in Australia, I feel like we have a very tight-knit community. You can pretty much meet. I know in Brisbane, if you went to some games meetups for maybe 3 months, you'd probably meet all of the heavy hitters at least in Brisbane. You would be able to meet the people that made Unpacking and heaps of other stuff. Oh, I'm losing all the names right now, but there's so many of them.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was talking to someone else the other day. We were talking about Mega Dev, which is at the end of the year we have Games Week in Melbourne, and they're talking about how all the people they met last year, and they're like, yeah, we met the guys who are working on why has it forgotten me as well? Silk Song.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, the devs that make that. And I was like, really? They were there? Like, yeah, they were on the table. I had a chat with them. And I was like, I didn't even know that they were there. Like, what the heck? And, they just have random people who obviously, like, I heard there were Steam people roaming around doing stuff as well. And I was like, man, there's just, when you go to these meetups, especially the ones that kind of bring everyone together,
Yeah.
You're right. You have these heavy hitters, which, like, I remember as well, our friend Blake,
Yep.
went to the urinal at one of these things and was like, oh, hey, how's it going? And he's like, I am the CEO of this big major company. He's like, oh, cool. And like, you're washing your hands together and you're like, this guy's, a millionaire. And I'm just, at the urinal with them, they're just regular people. So like, it's awesome hearing those stories as well, because then rubbing up shoulders with people like that, I think obviously it's amazing to meet people who you look up to and aspire to be, but also I think it makes you more confident going in, okay, this is possible. I can see, they've got interests and disinterests like me. Not the whole like they're people too type thing, but more of like it's possible because they're from where I'm from, and it means that we can both achieve that same greatness that we're looking for. So yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, pointing that out. Because I know a lot of the time you see people overseas in the States and in Europe, and you're like, man, we're so isolated and far away from them, and it's scary because sometimes it feels like the best opportunities are going to take you away from our home. Means you have to pack up our bags and go overseas and live in a place where sure there's more opportunity, but we're Australians, we love to live where we are, and especially in the beautiful town Queensland and Brisbane and all those, hotter, nicer, warmer climates. Unlike Melbourne, where it's like, today we've had 3 seasons, I think. It's not as fun. But, it's kind of disheartening sometimes where I'm like, I want to go do this thing, but the opportunity is only overseas for us. And so I love the fact, I think you're right, like we're very tight-knit here in Australia, but I think because of that, and because there's kind of less risk in certain aspects, we can also do riskier things. Like you were saying before, doing a whole, like, I reckon if you just ask a pub somewhere, like, hey, we're doing this whole rifting games night thing where we're just going to play jazz but to like music soundtracks. In the States, that sure there might be some that do it, but like if you do that in the right city in Australia, it will become a thing, and it will be it'll become part of the culture. It'll become a tradition there. It's not that hard in Australia to start this brand new cool thing because you have the unique idea and make it annually, and then people rock up, and then all of a sudden you've just started this whole new craze. Where in the States, probably, people have already tried doing that, or someone else has already, done it. Where, yeah, I think the next 5 to 10 years is going to be very interesting, but it's also really cool to see like the growth, and the more new people come in and, have this energy and these bright ideas, makes it also kind of exciting as well, and isn't as disheartening as like, oh yeah, if you want real opportunity, go to the States, go to Europe. And I think, with us finally getting decent internet and proving to ourselves as well the world, like, saying, games like Unpacking, games coming out like Silksong, and you've got bigger companies like Rockstar who are like buying companies in Sydney and that sort of thing. As much as the industry is very much in a survival state, I think there's also this element of like, okay, before Australia, we got left in the dust because we're too far away, we were too expensive, and we had terrible internet. Where now at least we're showing that even if the rest of the world leaves us in terms of funding and support, we can take care of ourselves, and they'll end up coming back being like, okay, you guys are pretty cool. Yeah, okay, fair enough. You've proven your point here.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I think, like you were saying before, having those unique ideas will actually set us apart. And I think as well, because when people do come and visit us, because there'll be occasional people who come from, like I met some people from like Apple Arcade that come down and talked with smaller devs. People always are from like Unreal and Unity and other publishers, and they see these spaces and places. Like it's so much more genuine and cool.
Yeah.
And especially those experiences, like you were saying, just having that unique idea of like a fun time and everyone's hanging out. I think Americans love it because sometimes, and this is my bias showing, sometimes Americans have this very nice front, but behind that layer, they aren't very genuine, and there's lots of, masking of things. Where Aussies, I feel like, we're very true blue most of the time. I feel like what we say, we mean, and we're usually just like, how it is how it is. We hate bull crappers, and we're like, be genuine, and that's how you do it. And so, yeah, you got me excited now. I'm like, oh, what other cool things can we do that will like, bring in cool cultural aspects of it? Because yeah, music I think is such an old form of like the medium, but there's still so much more we can do with it. Like you were saying, like games, I feel like still have this stigma in many aspects, especially with music. I feel like people are like, oh, like film, I feel like has just started to be properly respected in terms of like what it means to be like an orchestral cinematic piece. Even then, there was like, it's not classical, so it's still different.
Yeah.
And you might have differing opinions on that as well in terms of like what counts as real music. But yeah, because I love learning about like the culture of music and games together. Because especially when you go to like the more retro stuff of like different electronic music, I used to love watching. They'd do like bands and stuff, and they'd play music just off of the Game Boy or like old instrument systems. Like they just would hack it and be like, all right, it's an instrument now. Like let's play some music. Like that stuff is so cool. And I think you're right in. Because I've been thinking a lot about, games and kind of these events and things we can do to build the community, and even ways in which people can like market our stuff. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell people something in a way. But I think events are actually something that the industry, we still have like closed industry events, but I think finding ways to make it more commercial. Like in Australia, we have PAX and kind of some other stuff. You guys have anything up in Brisbane way that
there's Supernova,
like we've got that too. But I feel like finding cool ways, like you were saying, like doing finding different ways of making it more open to the public and less industry focused would actually be really good in helping then grow the industry. Because then you can have, selling tickets for stuff, and you can have recurring guests, and everyone can be like, I love that guy because he does a really good Final Fantasy riff on like this one, instrument that no one, like what's that one called? It's like electric one, and you can use your hands to like
the theremin.
And then just like the theremin guy that's just like, you know what? He comes in and he plays the Undertale soundtrack, and it's so good. Like, having those recurring characters, I think would actually be such a good idea
Yeah.
in like building the industry. And then you have a whole sub niche genre
Yeah.
of music, which is something really cool. Because I always see like, there's concerts going on or live music at pubs and stuff, but having something that themed and having it recurring, I think would make it really cool. So if you ever go through with it, even if it's up your way, I will come up and visit because that sounds like such a fun thing to experience and see.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, so you heard it here, folks. We're starting new events up down under, so come visit. Cool. Well, that's kind of a lot of the questions I had for the full episode. I guess now is the time for you to shield yourself. Where can people find your work? Where can they reach you? What if they want to learn more about Oscar? Where the heck do they go?
This is a great question. I've been so slack at being online in the last couple of years. If you want to you can find my games on itch. My username is Oscarno, Oscarno. Same on Blue Sky. If you feel like trolling Twitter, it's the same there as well, maybe with an underscore at the end. I will be putting more stuff up very soon, and I'll make sure to link it all in those places.
Thank you all for watching. If for those who are supporting or interested, we're going to do a exclusive second part where Oscar's going to share some of his process and work, and we're actually going to open a program, maybe compose something. So if you like that, then become a supporter of Backlog Banter, and help support the show and learn about Oscar and his music. Because I would love to have you back as a recurring guest occasionally. You can talk more about the work when it's public and any more cool ideas. It's not just a one and only time. We do allow reappearances here. So
great, sounds fun.
Yeah, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.